The last thing I heard before my head hit the edge of that granite countertop was my own daughter telling her husband to make it quick, because the neighbors were starting to stare. I was 68 years old, on my knees on a kitchen floor I had paid to remodel, and the woman I carried for 9 months was holding a fistful of my hair like she was wringing out a dish rag. "It's $3 million, Mother," she said. $3 million. You really thought we'd let an old woman sit on top of it forever? I want you to remember that I am still here to tell you this. I want you to remember that, because for about 90 seconds that morning I genuinely believed I was going to die in the house I had bought for them. And I want you to know how wrong they were about how that day was going to end. Let me go back, because none of it makes sense unless you understand who I was before. My husband and I built a heating and air conditioning business out of a single rented bay on the east side of town. 31 years. We started with one used van and a phone number printed on magnets we stuck to our own car doors at red lights. By the time he passed, we had 11 trucks, a warehouse, and a name people in 3 counties trusted. When I sold the company 2 years after the funeral, after the lawyers and the taxes and the buyout, I walked away with a little over $3 million. People hear that number and they picture a yacht. I pictured a quiet life, a paid-off house, and enough left over that my 2 grandsons would never have to choose a college based on a coupon. I am telling you about the money first because the money is the reason for everything that came after. I used to think love was the reason. I was raised to believe family was the one place greed couldn't reach. I learned otherwise on a Tuesday in March, and I am not naive anymore. My daughter was my only child. Her father spoiled her, and I let him because she came late and she came hard. And after 2 miscarriages, I would have handed her the moon on a string if she'd asked. She grew up pretty and restless. She married a man I'll call my son-in-law, because I refused to say his name out loud anymore. He sold cars when they met. By the time the trouble started, he was consulting, which as far as I could ever tell meant wearing nice watches and explaining to people why their investments had underperformed. After my husband died, I rattled around our big house alone for 2 winters. My daughter started calling more. Then she started visiting. Then, one Sunday over a pot roast I'd made because she said she missed my pot roast, she took my hand across the table and said, "Mom, it's not safe for you to be alone anymore. Come live with us. Let us take care of you the way you took care of us." I cried. I'm not ashamed to say it. I thought I'd gotten my daughter back. I sold my house. That was my first mistake, and I will own it, because some of the comments people leave on stories like mine say women like me are stupid, and I understand the anger behind that, but I'd ask you to consider what it feels like to be lonely enough that your child's open arms look like rescue. I didn't hand them the $3 million, though. I want to be clear about that, because it matters later. I'm a businesswoman. I put the bulk of it into an investment account with an advisor my late husband and I had used for 20 years, a careful man named Mr. Downs Castellano, who'd watched our company grow from that one rented bay. The grandson's college money went into an irrevocable trust, and I underline irrevocable, because that single word is the spine of this whole story. Once it was set, not even I could take it back out. Not me, not my daughter, not God himself with a notarized form. What I did do, and this is where they got their hook into me, was a smaller thing that felt like nothing at the time. I moved into their house, and I let my daughter set up a joint checking account for the household so she could buy groceries and pay the gardener without me writing a check every week. I funded it with about $40,000, and I added her name. I did not add his. Remember that too. For about 8 months, it was almost lovely. I had a room over the garage with its own little sitting area. I cooked dinner most nights. My grandsons would come find me to read with them. I told myself the loneliness had been a fever, and now I was well. Then the business consulting must have hit a rough patch, because the mood in that house changed the way weather changes. You don't notice the first cloud, only the dark. My son-in-law started sitting down with me at the kitchen table, all warmth, a cup of coffee in front of each of us, asking gentle questions. Wasn't it a lot of work managing accounts at my age? Wasn't Mr. Castellano a little old-fashioned, charging fees when there were apps now? Wouldn't it be simpler, he'd say, leaning in, if everything were in one place where the family could help me keep an eye on it? I'd spent 31 years across the desk from salesmen. I know the smell of a man circling a sale. I'd smile and say, "I'll think about it, dear," and pour him more coffee, and change the subject to the boys' baseball. He didn't like that I wouldn't bite. The coffee chats got shorter, and the requests got plainer. One night, he slid a piece of paper across the table, a power of attorney, already filled out, with his name on the line where mine should have been the one in control. "Just so we can act fast if something happens to you," he said. "You could have a stroke, Mom." "Then what? The state takes it." I told him I had an attorney handle all that, and it was already taken care of. That was the first lie I told in that house, and it turned out to be the smartest thing I ever did, because it sent him sniffing in the wrong direction for months. I did not have that attorney yet. I got one the next morning. I drove myself to the office of a sharp young woman named Naomi, who'd been recommended by Mr. Castellano. I told her everything, sitting in a leather chair with my purse in my lap like a church lady, and I watched her face go from polite to very, very serious. She told me 3 things. 1. The trust for the boys could not be touched by anyone, full stop. 2. My main investment account was mine alone and no one could move a dollar of it without my signature, which meant the safest thing I could do was nothing. Keep refusing, keep signing nothing. 3. And she said this slowly so I'd hear it. If you ever feel physically unsafe in that house, you call me, and you call the police, and you do not wait to be polite about it. I laughed a little. I told her my daughter would never let anything happen to me. Naomi didn't laugh back. She just slid her card across the desk and told me to keep it somewhere they'd never look. I'm a practical woman. I went home and I taped that card to the underside of my jewelry box. And then I did one more thing. And the people who watch stories like mine and poke holes in them will appreciate that I'm telling it straight. I bought a cheap second phone, a little prepaid thing, and I kept it switched off and sipped inside the lining of an old winter coat in the back of my closet. Not because I was running a spy operation, because my son-in-law had quietly set up my regular phone for me months earlier to make it easier, Mom. And I'd begun to wonder, the way you wonder about a draft in a sealed room, just how much of my life he could see through it. I didn't use the cheap phone for some secret double life. I used it exactly twice. Both times mattered. The walls came in slow. He took over the household checking, the one with my daughter's name on it, and started managing it, which meant my 40,000 dragged down to 400. And he kept telling me the difference went to the boys' activities. My car developed a problem he insisted on getting fixed at a shop run by a friend of his, and somehow it stayed at that shop for 3 weeks while I had no way to leave. My daughter, who used to find me to talk, started finding reasons not to. When I'd bring up Mr. Castellano or the accounts at dinner, my son-in-law would set his fork down very gently and say, "We are not doing money at the table, Mother," and the temperature in the room would drop 10 degrees, and my daughter would look at her plate. There was a night I came downstairs for water and heard them in the den, not shouting, which was worse. His voice, low. "She's going to sit on it until she dies, and then it goes to probate, and we wait 2 years for a check. If there's anything left after the nursing home eats it, there's a better way. She just needs to sign." And my daughter's voice, after a pause that I will hear until the day I die, "Then make her sign." I went back up the stairs one at a time so the wood wouldn't creak. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark for a long while. I want to tell you, I felt afraid. The truth is the first thing I felt was a kind of cold clarity. The same feeling I used to get when a big client tried to stiff us on an invoice, and I knew it was about to get ugly and I knew I was going to win anyway. My husband used to call it my Tuesday face. I had my Tuesday face on, alone at 68, in my daughter's guest room. The next morning, I switched on the cheap phone for the first time, and I called Naomi from inside my closet with the door shut and a sweater over my mouth. I told her what I'd heard. She told me to start writing things down. Dates, sentences, the car, the checking account, all of it, and to keep the notebook somewhere not in that house. I started leaving it in the glove box of my own car the day it finally came back from the shop, and after that, I made myself useful and visible and quiet, and I waited, and I documented, and I did not sign a single thing. It took them 6 more weeks to run out of patience. Looking back, I think the consulting money got worse because the watches stopped appearing and a man came to the door one afternoon with paperwork that my son-in-law took outside to discuss in the driveway with a lot of arm waving. The Tuesday it happened, I'll never forget the light. It was that thin, bright March light that makes you think spring is closer than it is. The boys were at school. My daughter was home, which was unusual. My son-in-law came into the kitchen while I was making myself toast, and he had the power of attorney in his hand again, and a pen, and a face I'd never seen on him before. Not charming, not even angry, just done. "Sit down," he said. "We're finishing this today." I told him, calmly, buttering my toast, that I would not be signing anything, that I had spoken to my attorney, and that I'd like him to please bring my car keys back to the hook by the door where they belonged. He crossed the kitchen faster than a man his size should be able to, and he hit me. An open-handed blow first, across the face, the kind that turns the whole room sideways. I dropped the knife. I grabbed the counter. And then he hit me again, with a closed fist this time, and the four came up and met me, and my head caught the edge of the island on the way down, and the bright March light went red at the corners. I heard my daughter say, "Oh my God." For one stupid, hopeful half-second, I thought she was coming to help me. She came around the island, and she looked down at me, and she grabbed my hair. I have tried, in the 2 years since, to find a word for what it does to a body to be dragged across a floor by your own child while you cry out a name you gave her. There isn't one. She pulled me through the kitchen and into the front hall, and her husband yanked the door open, and between the two of them, they hauled me out onto the porch and down the front steps and let go of me on the walkway like I was a bag of yard waste set out for collection. My elbow was bleeding. My slipper had come off in the hall. And my daughter stood on the top step, breathing hard, and said to the whole quiet street, "Get out. It's $3 million and you'll get none of it. Don't come back." That's the part the people in the comments always fixate on, the neighbors watching. They ask why nobody did anything. I'll tell you exactly what the neighbors did because it's the reason I'm not a sadder story. Across the street and 2 houses down lived a retired man. I'll call my neighbor, a widower named Hank, who used to wave at me when I got the mail, and who'd once fixed my mailbox post without being asked. Hank was on his own porch with his coffee. Hank saw the whole thing. And Hank, God bless that man, did not stand there filming it for the internet, and he did not look away to spare himself the discomfort. Hank went inside, picked up his phone, and called 911, and then he walked across the street in his slippers and stood between me and that house with his arms crossed. A 74-year-old man with a bad hip, and he said, loud enough for them to hear, "Police are coming. I'd go back inside if I were you." They weren't back inside. They actually thought, I think, that it would blow over, that an old woman wouldn't press it, that blood was thicker than a 911 call. I lay on Hank's porch with a dish towel pressed to my head, and I used the cheap phone for the second and last time. I didn't call my daughter. I called Naomi, and all I said was, "It happened." Hank called the police. "I'm bleeding, but I'm all right." And she said, "Don't say one word to anyone until I'm there." And she made the 40-minute drive in 26. The police came first. 2 officers, one of them a young woman with kind eyes who knelt down on Hank's porch and took my hand. They photographed my face and my elbow and the slipper that was still sitting in my daughter's front hall when they went in. They have body cameras now in our county. Everything that was said on that doorstep is on a hard drive in an evidence room. My son-in-law learned that the hard way when he tried to tell the officers I'd fallen. Here's the thing about the part everyone wants to argue about. How a son-in-law could have such power over my money? The answer is he never actually did. That was the whole illusion he was selling. He had bullied his way into the small household checking account through my daughter's name. He had a power of attorney form he printed off the internet that I had never signed and never would. He had access to my regular phone and probably read my email and thought that made him a man in control. But the real money, the investment account, the irrevocable trust from my grandsons, had never been within his reach for one single day, because I had quietly walked into Naomi's office months before and made sure of it. He swung at a vault he thought was a piggy bank. When the dust settled, here is what fell apart, and it was their entire life, just like I'd been promised it would be by my own bones that morning on the floor. My son-in-law was arrested that afternoon for elder abuse and assault. In my state, hurting a person over 65 is its own serious charge, on top of the assault, the body camera footage, Hank's eyewitness account, the photographs, and the notebook I'd been keeping in my glove box. Naomi handed all of it over, turned what he assumed would be his word against a confused old lady's into a case he had no chance of beating. He took a plea in the end. He served time. Not enough in my opinion, but real time. In a real cell. Away from those nice watches. My daughter was charged too. The people who ask why she wasn't can rest easy. Dragging your elderly mother out of a house by her hair in front of witnesses is not a gray area. She didn't go to prison the way he did, but she pleaded to her own charges. She got probation and court-ordered conditions. And there is now a documented finding in a courthouse with our family name on the paperwork that she did what she did. That cannot be untaped from the jewelry box of public record. And the money, the $3 million they tore my hair out over, they got exactly what my daughter promised the street I would get. None of it. I changed my will the same month. The investment account will do what I decide it does. The trust will put my grandsons through college no matter what their parents did, because I will not punish two boys for the sins of their mother and father. Those children read with me over the garage, and I love them, and they are not their parents. But my daughter and her husband will never see a dollar of mine. I made certain of it with the same careful hands that built the company. Their greed assumed I was too soft to protect. People ask me if I've spoken to her since. The honest answer is once. She wrote me a letter from her court-ordered counseling, full of the language they teach you in those rooms, and she ended it asking when she could begin to repair things. I read it twice. Then I wrote back 4 sentences. I told her I forgave her because carrying the hate was too heavy for the years I have left, and I wanted to set it down. I told her that forgiveness and trust are 2 different animals, and she had killed the second one with her bare hands on a kitchen floor. I told her not to contact me again, and I told her that the boys would always have a grandmother, with a door that was open to them and locked to her, and that this was the last kindness and the last cruelty I had in me. I mailed it, and I did not keep a copy. I live alone again now, by choice, in a small house I bought with cash, near a window where the same thin March light comes in every spring, and I'm no longer afraid of it. Hank comes over on Sundays and I make him pot roast, and we don't talk much. He fixed my new mailbox without being asked. Some weekends a car pulls up and 2 teenage boys spill out of it, taller every time, and they come find me to talk the way their mother used to before the money got into her, and we read, although they pretend they're too old for it. If you take one thing from an old woman who learned it the hard way, let it be this: love your children with your whole heart. Help them, feed them, show up for them. But do not ever mistake love for surrender. Keep your own roof, keep your own name on your own accounts. Keep one careful card taped somewhere they'll never look, and keep what you built until the day you no longer need it. And then, and only then, decide with your own clear eyes who has earned it. I gave my daughter everything a mother could give except the one thing she actually wanted, and that one thing is the only reason I'm still here. Sitting in my own light, telling you my own story, in my own words. I have turned that morning over in my mind more times than I can count, and the strange thing is that none of it was random. Every piece of it grew out of something planted long before. My son-in-law put his hands on me because he had spent a year learning that charm and pressure could move me, and he assumed fear would finish the job. My daughter grabbed my hair because she had let greed sit in her chest until it crowded out everything I'd raised her to be. And I walked off that floor with my fortune intact because, months earlier, in a quiet office, I had chosen to do the careful, unglamorous thing instead of the trusting, easy one. Causes have a way of becoming consequences. We just don't always live long enough to see the harvest. What saved me wasn't luck. It was 3 things I'd built quietly over a long life, and I'd offer them to anyone watching. The first is simply refusing to do wrong even when wrong is easy. I could have punished my grandsons by cutting them out alongside their parents, and no one would have blamed me. But you don't fix a broken family by breaking 2 more innocent people, and a clear conscience turned out to be worth more than spite. The second is the habit of seeing clearly even when the truth is unflattering. The hardest moment of all wasn't the punch. It was the night on the stairs when I finally let myself understand who my daughter had become, instead of who I wished she still was. Naomi gave me the legal armor, but I had to be willing to look honestly first. Soft eyes would have cost me everything. The third is the one nobody tells you about, and it's the plainest kind of toughness. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the steadiness to keep buttering your toast while a man towers over you, to keep a notebook in a glove box week after week with nothing happening, to drag yourself off a porch and make one calm phone call instead of dissolving. Hank had it too. A man with a bad hip standing in his slippers between me and that house. That kind of backbone isn't something you're born with. You build it one quiet decision at a time, long before the day you need it. So I don't tell this story to make anyone hate their children or hoard their savings out of fear. I tell it because the woman who survived that kitchen floor was made, not given. If you want to be ready for the worst day of your life, start now, on the ordinary ones. Be the kind of person who does right, who sees straight, and who doesn't fold. The rest, I've learned, takes care of itself.